Hello everybody and welcome. Today we will discuss about monopolistic competition. Previously in the successive two lessons we discussed about perfectly competitive market structure and monopoly market structure. By the way, those two market structures are opposite and they are found on the opposite extreme of the market structure. So they have opposite market structure characteristic. And today we are going to discuss about monopolistic competition, which is part of imperfect competition. As you remember, market structure can be categorized into four, which are perfectly competitive market and the imperfect market, monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly market structure. So among the imperfect market structure, the one is monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition has a blending features of both monopoly and competition. As I said, monopoly and perfectly competitive market are the two extreme market structure, whereas monopolistic competition has a features of or takes the features of monopoly and perfectly competitive market. Monopolistic competition can be defined as it is a type of imperfect market structure in which there are many sellers, many small sellers like that of perfectly competitive market, having differentiated but similar, or we can say not identical or not homogeneous products. That means the products of the monopolistic competition firms are not perfect substitutes, are not perfectly substituted because they produce differentiated product, or they produce a product which are not homogeneous or which are not perfectly substitute, unlike that of the perfectly competitive market. Hence, the only difference between perfect competition and monopolistic competition is the product differentiation in the case of a monopolistic competition. Firms in monopolistic competition have differentiated products that gives the monopolistic competitors some degree of market power that makes them to be price setter relatively. Like that of the monopoly, they are the price setter because they have differentiated product which makes them to be price setter. Moving to the characteristics of monopolistic competition, as I said before, monopolistic competition takes the characteristics of monopoly market structure and competitive market structure or perfectly competitive market structure. So, like that of perfectly competitive market, there are many small firms when we compare with the market. There are many small firms, but even though they are small in size, they have some degree of pricing power like that of the monopoly because they have differentiated product, differentiated service or product. Decisions of any one firm will have little or no effect on the other firms. Because of their differentiated product, they may have an effect, they may affect or they may not affect the other firms. And the other is differentiated product with physical, imaginary quality or purchase benefits. And they mainly focus on branding and customer loyalty. Their differentiated product, they have differentiated product because or with the features of physical characteristics or imaginary features, or the quality may differ or the purchase benefit may differ from one firm to the other firm in monopolistic competition. And they heavily focus on branding and advertising those branding to the customers. And they want to make the customers to be loyal for their service or products. Majorly, they invest on product development and advertising. Because since they have differentiated product, they want to tell the differentiated features of that product to their customers, or they want to communicate. They have to communicate their different features to the customers. Otherwise, the customers consider that the product has no difference, so they may not come, and they may go to another firms that they advert heavily. And the other feature is no price competition, because they have differentiated products once, so they compete on quality and marketing. Their differentiated product makes them to compete with quality and marketing, because they can make different price. They can make different price according to the quality and their advertising. Barriers to enter and exit are low, just like that of perfectly competitive market. There are less barriers to enter or to exit. Thus, this leads there is no economic profit in the long run. The economic profit will be eliminated by the new entrant to the market. And if there is economic loss in the long run, firms want to exit from the market, so that economic loss will be eliminated. Let's see some more detail about advertising. When a firm in a monopolistic competition advertises, so the advertisement makes the demand to increase. Or when the firm advertises, the demand curve shifts from left to the right. That means the demand increases. And also, when the firm advertises, the demand becomes inelastic. As you see here, the demand before advertising has less elasticity. When the firm advertises, the demand increases. At the same time, it becomes less, or it becomes inelastic. So advertising is an important non-price method of competition. Advertising is one of non-price competition method. A successful advertising campaign can increase the demand and decrease its inelasticity by convincing customers or buyers that the firm product is truly different, thus enhancing revenues and firms of the advertised company. The degree to which advertising impacts demand varies from market to market. It depends on the market. So as you see, the more the firm advertises a product, the demand curve increases and the demand curve becomes inelastic. Let's see output and price determination. Equilibrium output is where the profits are maximized at a point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. By the way, this equation works for the perfectly competitive market and monopoly market structure, and it also works for monopolistic competition market. If marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, so it is advisable to expand, or it is advisable to increase the sales or to increase the volume of production up to the point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. If marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, it's also advisable or recommended that it is better to reduce the output volume until the equilibrium arrived. That means marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Each firm is sensitive to the average market price, by the way. It's not governed by the average market price, unlike that of perfectly competitive market. As you remember, perfectly competitive market takes the price of the market. The price is determined by the market force, market demand and market supply. And the firms in the perfectly competitive market are price taker. But here, even though they are price setter, still each firm is sensitive to the average market price. And each firm pays attention to the actions of the other, and no one firm's action directly affects the action of the others because they have differentiated product. And there is there is no collision or conspiracy to fix the prices in monopolistic competition. In monopolistic competition, there is no collision or there is no conspiring to fix the price of the product. Proceeding to the short-run equilibrium, each firm has a downward sloping demand curve for its own product because the firm produces differentiated product in monopolistic competition. As you remember from perfectly competitive market structure discussion, a firm in a perfectly competitive market has a demand curve which is horizontal because they produce homogeneous product. But here they produce differentiated product and their demand curve is a downward sloping. That means as the price increases, the demand decreases, and as the price increases or the price decreases, the demand increases. So there is an inverse relationship between the price and the demand. In the short run, profits are maximized when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. By the way, this equation works for the perfectly competitive market structure, for monopoly market structure, and for monopolistic competition. A firm can make profits or loss in the short run, but this profit or losses cannot continue in the long run or does not last long because there is free entry and exit in the long run. Let's see the cases. If there is a profit, if there is an economic profit, so firms become interested to join the market and new firms will enter to the market in the long run. And the demand curves for each of the existing firms will fail because the new entrant shares the demand. The new entrant takes the demand, and the demand curve become more elastic due to the increasing substitute. Since the entry of new firms, so there is an increase of substitutes. Due to that, the demand curve for the existing firms will be elastic. That means the customers become more responsive for the price change. This decline in the demand continues until when average total cost becomes tangent with the demand curve. At that point, the economic profits are reduced to be zero. That is, equilibrium is achieved there. Let's see the other conditions, that is, if there is an economic loss. If there is an economic loss, some firms from the market, from the monopolistic competition, some firms will exit from the industry in the long run because they don't want to make loss. Thus, the demand curves for the remaining firms, that means the firms which are still in the market, shifts to the right. That means the demand increases and makes the demand curve to be inelastic due to the reduced in substituted. As the firm exits from the market, the remaining firms in the market, the demand of the remaining firms in the market increases, and at the same time, it becomes inelastic due to the reduction of substitute products. The higher the demand results in smaller loss for the existing firms until the loss disappear. That means where average total cost curve is tangent to the demand curve, it continues. Let's see graphically. Here, let's check whether there is profit or loss by first pointing the marginal cost. Here is a point, and let us look at the price on the demand curve. Here is the price, and let us see average total cost is here. So price is greater than average total cost, so there is an economic profit here, an economic profit. So this is in the short. If this occurs in the short run, so the firm wants to enter because the market is attractive. New firms enter into the market and they take out this profit. They take away this profit, and ultimately the demand curve become, the demand of the remaining firm, the demand in the the demand for the firm decreases because the other firms are joining to the market, and the demand curve become tangent to HC. That's what we call equilibrium point. And when there is an economic loss, that means, let's check whether there is economic loss or not. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost here, and let's move to the demand curve, and here is a price, and as you see, the average total cost is greater than the price, so there is here economic loss. If there is an economic loss in the short run, the firms from the market exit or leave the market. So as the firm leaves the market, the demand for the remaining firms increases up to a level where the demand curve is tangent to the average total cost. That is what we call the equilibrium point. And at the end, in the long run in general, there is no economic profit because there is free entry and free exit from the market. Let's do one example. Suppose an inverse demand function for monopolistically competitive firms product is given by price equals 100 minus 2q, and the cost function is given by C as a function of Q equals 5 plus 2Q. Determine the profit maximizing price and quantity and the maximum profits. So before that, when we are asked the profit maximizing point, we have to remember the marginal revenue equals marginal cost equation. So to find out marginal revenue and marginal cost, to find out marginal revenue, we have to derivate total revenue. When we derivate total revenue, we get marginal revenue. So total revenue equals price times quantity. And the price is given from here. The price is 100 minus 2q. So 100 minus 2q times q. And we get total revenue as 100q minus 2q square. So when we derivate this, marginal revenue is the first derivative of total revenue. That is 100 minus 4q. Thus, we already get marginal revenue. And let's move to marginal cost. Marginal cost is similarly the first derivative of total cost. Hence, marginal cost is the derivation of this. When we derive this, the constant becomes 0 and this becomes 2. So when we equate to find the profit maximized point, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Marginal revenue is 100 minus 4q, and marginal cost is 2. So when we solve q, we get 24.5. So the quantity that maximizes our profit is 24.5, and the price can be calculated by replacing the quantity in this equation, in the price equation. So we get price 51, and the profit can be calculated by total revenue minus total cost. Total revenue is price times quantity. We already calculated price and quantity, so we just multiply them. And minus total cost function is this one. So we just replace the quantity and we get 1195.5 is the profit, the maximum profit that can be obtained. This profit is achieved at a point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Let's move to the long-run profit and equilibrium. In the short run, by the way, equilibrium is attained when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. However, in the long run, both conditions, that is marginal revenue equals marginal cost and average revenue equals average cost, must hold. That means price equals long run average cost. Long run equilibrium will occur when demand is equal to the average total cost. For each firm at a level of output at which the firm's demand curve is just tangent to its average total cost curve. The point of tangency will always occur at the same level of output as where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. New entrants will continue to enter as long as there is economic profit. If there is economic profit, new firms will join the market. As soon as the profits are taken away by the new firms, equilibrium will be attained. In the market, and no new firms will be attracted to the market, which is the only equilibrium consistent with low barriers to entry. Because of low barriers or because of free entry and exits, the economic profit cannot last long, or the economic loss cannot last long. Let's see how the demand curve changes. In the short run, if there is a profit here, let's see where the profit is. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost here, and when we move to the short run demand curve, here is a price, and the price here is more than the average total cost, so there is a profit in the short run. If there is a profit in the short run, the firms or new firms are entering to the market, and when new firms are entering to the market, the demand for the firm decreases. The demand for the firm decreases, and up to a point where the demand curve becomes adjacent, or we can say tangent to the average total cost. This is the point in the long run. This is the equilibrium point. It is a point where the demand curve becomes tangent for the average total cost, and it is called equilibrium point. If there is a short run loss, if there is a loss in the short run, let's see, here is the marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and when we move to short run demand curve, here is a price, and the price is lower than the average total cost, and there is loss here. If there is a loss, the firms, some of the firms may exit from the market. When they exit from the market, when they leave from the market, the demand for the remaining firm increases. The demand for the remaining firm increases up to a point where the long term or the long run demand curve become tangent to the average total cost curve. So this point is a point of equilibrium in the long run. Let's see some of the inefficiencies in monopolistic competition. By the way, among the market structure, perfectly competitive market is the efficient market structure. Perfectly competitive market is efficient, whereas monopolistic competition has some inefficiencies. Let's see. Firms in a monopolistic competition operate in excess capacities. That means there are idle capacities. By the way, in this case, if we take an example which can be considered as monopolistic competition, if we take restaurants in our surrounding, so that can be a best example for monopolistic competition, because each restaurant have their own taste of foods, or each restaurant have their own differentiated services. That's why some restaurant gets more customer, and some restaurant asks higher price with the same service. So still, as we know, the restaurants have idle capacity, that they have excess capacity that they are not using. And firms in a monopolistic competition do not operate at a minimum average total cost in the long run. They are not operating in a minimum average total cost in the long run, and they waste resources on selling costs like advertising and promote their products, because firms in a monopolistic competition invest heavily on advertisement to tell for the customers that their product is different from their competitors. So they waste a high amount of resources, and their prices are higher than the marginal costs. Their prices are higher than the marginal costs. So this makes them, firms in a monopolistic competition are not efficient like that of perfectly competitive market. This is an exercise, so you have to do this exercise by yourself, and if you encounter a problem, so you can write on a comment box. This is the end. Thank you for listening. Have a good time. Bye.